Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar. Today's webinar, we're going to be looking at custom reports. Myself, I am Georgina Atfield, and I'm one of the education and media technicians here at Caseware, and I'm going to be overseeing the webinar today and keeping an eye on questions. And it will be Phil Reeves, one of our professional service consultants, that's going to be taking you through the main presentation today. So if you've got any questions today, then do pop them into the question field at the bottom of the Zoom panel. And like I say, we'll look to include a Q&A session at the end. I'll be monitoring those as they come in. And the webinar today is being recorded, and we'll look to publish the recording after. Now I'll hand over to Phil.
Yes, thank you, Georgie, and hopefully everyone can hear me. But yeah, thank you everyone for attending today's webinar on custom reports. We've got a lot to go through today, so a lot's to do with functionality, automation, getting the information into the custom reports, and as I say, getting that to pull through. So it doesn't matter what set of accounts we're putting that report into, we can automate it to pull through certain pieces of information from the wizard and from the accounts document. So you can see on our agenda on the screen, we won't just be talking about the creation and getting that into the financial statements. We're also going to talk about distributing those reports amongst the team. So one of the benefits of having these custom reports isn't that we're just able to create them once. It is also the fact that we can share them across the team as well, so other people can use the work that we're doing. One thing we don't want to do is have to keep replicating work that other people have done. So before we get into the custom reports, obviously it's important to note and start editing them. It's important to note exactly where you can find those custom reports. So if I was to jump to the next screen, on your Caseware installation path, you'll be able to find all of the custom reports that we have available within the system. There's a slightly different path for those that are produced for Accounts Advanced, so FRS 101, 102, 105, as there is for IFRS as well. So in our path on our system, so on our installation path, C drive, program files 86, Caseware resources, knowledge library, there will be an APP4 folder for any custom reports with regards to the FRS 101, 102, 105 template. There'll be an IFRS folder for any custom reports in relation to the IFRS template. And there is also a charity folder as well for any custom reports in relation to charities. The important thing as well that we'll see is the save location for those. So any custom reports we create, we'll want to save into the custom folder, which I'll show you in a minute. And it has to be in the custom folder for us to save that in or to load that into the sets of financial statements that we're working on. So we'll start off in our agenda and we'll go straight into creating a custom report and where they're located. So we've just mentioned that on the screen. So what I'll do is I will jump into our file explorer. So bear with me 1 second. Here we go. And hopefully you can see that on the screen. Okay. So yeah, obviously in our file explorer and our program files 86, we've already mentioned Caseware, we've mentioned resources and knowledge library, and these are the folders that I just touched upon. So if we go into APP4 or if we go into IFRS, what we'll find is a list of all the different knowledge libraries that Caseware uses to build in the financial statements. So when you've got a stocks note, it loads in the knowledge library for the stocks note, or when you've got balance sheet, it loads through the appropriate knowledge library for the balance sheet. So in this folder, it's got all the standard ones. Now, we don't edit those at all. You shouldn't be touching those. We'll just break the files. What you want to be doing is accessing and obtaining, ideally or potentially, one of these two reports. So you've got a Corp Accountants Report Custom, and then you've got a Corp Audit Report Custom. So two slightly different reports that you can use on the system. Now, we don't use this one if we are going to produce a custom report. What you want to do is you want to right click on this and take a copy of it. Always leave a standard version, a standard custom blank report in the folder path. Go to the knowledge library, go back to the custom folder that I mentioned previously and paste a version of that into here. That's always the first step of any report that you acquire and you want to customize. These are templates essentially that we use to then build out the content that we want into them. So you can have as many of those audit reports as you want. You could have one for FRS 101, one for FRS 102, one for FRS 105. If you're going to build an audit report for 105, then fair enough. You could have them for different auditors, depending on what sets of accounts you're working on as well. And again, we're going to go through some of the basic customizations that you've got in there, but you could really, in theory, you could have one audit report and you could customize it to pull through certain pieces of information depending on who the auditors are, certain text depending on who the auditors are, if you really wanted to as well. But we won't go to that level of granular detail in this webinar just because of time, really. The other thing I just want to point you in the direction of is this custom directors report as well. So there's a copy and paste custom directors report, which should be already available within the custom folder on your installation. So Caseware Resources Knowledge Library custom, it lives inside the custom folder because it's not applicable to one template specifically, and it can be applied across multiple different templates if we need it to be. So we can also create a custom directors report, but the skills and the customization options we're going to discuss in this session will be applicable to the directors report as well as the audit report. So once you've got it, you then need to look at customizing it. So we're going to look at how to create automated sections, build bullet points, apply styles in the report, should we need to. So if I jump it back into my folder path, first things first, again, if you want multiple, you can right click and rename it if you want to, and then we can open this up. I'm going to leave it as the default for today. The first time you take a copy of this, it's always going to ask you to update it. Please just say OK to that to make sure it's fully up to date with any changes that Caseware has released. Okay, now what that will do is that will open up our custom report. So custom report by default will always look the same. You'll have some guidance text at the top of the screen, then you'll have your signature section underneath that. So we can expand upon the information that's included on here, add our own text in. And again, I always suggest when you're using this just to keep the guidance text at the top, because it does give us a lot of good information about styles and examples of cell references that we can include in the file as well. Again, it's up to you. You can remove this at the start or you can remove it at the end. Just for, if you want to remove something, backspace, delete, pretty standard stuff in the same way that you would within Word or any other software that you're using. The second step or guidance I would always say to do is to create yourself some working space. This signature section at the bottom, so everything from this sort of what we call a spacer down, you don't really want to be touching, you don't really want to be editing, because there's cells inside of the background of there that will pull based on what's been populated within the individual file itself. So you don't want to touch any of that, but you want to give yourself some working space. So I would press enter on this marker here, the one that's got the text S against it. That stands for text standard input. If I make this slightly wider, we'll talk about styles in a minute, but we can see. There we go. We can see this is text standard input. Give ourselves some working space, as I say, to work on and get our content into the report on. And again, we would do that similarly with the director's report. Now, when we're putting our text in, I'm going to copy across from Word some information. So again, just to talk about customizing these reports. Now, obviously, you can copy in as much Word as you want to from Word. There's no issues with that. Control and V to paste that into your file. Now, the reason why I've done this and I've copied in from Word, again, in a lot of cases, we'll get our audit report from the auditors and we need to get that into the file. As I said previously, the benefit of this is that we can apply this across every file. So we're going to want to, potentially automate some of these areas based on which company that we're opening and applying this audit report into. We might want to customize the year-end date if we've got different files with different year-end dates, or, again, the audit report will change slightly between periods, but the bulk of it will stay consistent. So we could just tweak this year on year. So again, we might look to automate the year-end date on there as well. The other thing we want to look at, again, is some of the styles that are included on here. Now, at the moment, this opinions line is bold within the, and again, this is a common mistake that people make when they're building custom reports. It's bold within my Word document. I'll just bring that across. You can see that line is bolded, which means that in Caseware, in theory, it's bolded visually from what we can see on the screen, but Caseware works entirely off of styles. The style that's being used on this line, as we see on the left-hand side, is our text standard input style, which is the same style being used for this line, for this line, for this line, for this line, for this line. And because of that, when I build this into the financial statements in a minute, it's going to pick up text standard input. And just to give you an idea, text standard input within the accounts document is all of these green text boxes that we see here. So it's just standard text. So there won't be any bold applied to this line on our financial statement. So first thing we'll want to do is make sure that we pick up the right styles in the right places. To do that, on the toolbar at the top of the screen, let me just expand the toolbar. We have got the styles section available within the home tab. And at the moment, you can see it's picking up text standard input. So what I can do is I can use this drop down, and as the guidance says at the top of the screen, which is why I left the guidance on for anyone who wanted to have a look at that, for a headline, as we call it, or a heading, as most other people will call it, we want to either use the text subheader style or the text subhead input style to make those bold. So we click on our row, again, at the moment, picking up text standard input. We click on the drop down and we say, okay, we want to use either, again, which one of these two you use, text subhead or text sub input, is completely up to you. The main difference between the two is pretty obvious. The input one means that you can input, you can adjust it on the face of the financial statements. The other one will be locked on the face of the accounts. So it just depends if you want to be able to overtype that on the accounts or if you want someone else to be able to overtype that on the accounts. So if I go for the input one, now when I build this into the financial statement, it's going to pick up the right style. The text standard input is absolutely fine for the rest of the text. Again, that means I'll be able to overtype on the face of the accounts if I need to. If you want to lock it or add a level of say, or reduce the amount of editing that you can do on it, then you can go and use the text standard layout instead. Looks exactly the same, but it just means we won't be able to override that. We won't get that same green text box that we get within the accounts for these text sections. The giveaway as to whether, just so you know, on the left-hand side as to whether something is input or not, is just this sort of, you've got a blue line that you can see running through, but you can see the bits that have also have a purpley line alongside it. These indicate that these are input areas that we can overtype on the face of the accounts. So I'll just go to that text as well. So we'll need to apply that across all of the files. So anywhere we've got a header, click on the line for like basis for opinion, click on the drop down, change the heading to text subhead input. The first thing you want to do is you want to look at styles, make sure that the right styles pulling through in the right places. Obviously, again, the spacing that's picked up within Word will be followed across into Caseware. So we've got quite a big space in here. If I go to print preview, which we can use at any point to see how this is going to look without the headers, you can see it's quite a big space there. So we can remove these spaces, as I mentioned, pressing delete to get rid of those spaces as well. So first thing you want to look at is the styles of the text you're putting in there, making sure it's picking up the right style. The next thing you want to look at is automation. So names of companies, year-end dates, the word period or year-end, or sorry, that's profit there. The profit for the year, profit for the period, depending on the length of period. These are just some of the things that we might look to automate within the file. And we can do that by creating what we call cells within the software. So the name of the company is a cell that's already available for us. We can populate that directly from the engagement properties window, which hopefully you're all familiar with, the very first window that we populate when we create a brand new file. Our operating name and our reporting dates pulling through in here. Now the cells are already available for us in the system. So if I click on the question mark icon at the top of the screen and I tick this box, it will say view a selection of sample cells to copy where live references are desired. So I can tick this box and it gives us some examples of some of the cells that we can use. So we got year or period, depending on whether it's more than 12 months or less than 12 months. We even got cells like we or our, depending on whether we're talking about our cell, the company as a whole. We've got dates as well. We got director, lowercase, uppercase, group, company. Again, because all of these are going to be pulled through within different areas of the audit reports. So for the name of the company, we've got a cell already available. So all we do is remove our written text. We go to the insert button or the home button on the toolbar. Insert, you've got cell option on the left-hand side. But if you go to the home button, you've got the cell button available here. So we click on cell. If you love a shortcut, it's Control and L on the keyboard as well. So we can go to the cell option and we can create a new cell. Now, the important thing here is to use the cell numbers that are provided within the software. So you can see we got cust client, which is for the client name. So all I do is copy that cust client. It will go red because that cell already exists. We know that cell exists because we can see it. It's this cell here. So you press OK. It will tell us that already exists. You say OK, and you can see it's going to pull through the calculated value as the company name. Now it's pulling through the company name from this file because I've got the accounts and the audit report open within this Elstrom file that we're working on. If I was just outside of case, if I didn't have a set of accounts open, then it will just create a blank cell which will populate depending on which set of accounts I'm building this into. So we press OK, and there we go. We've got our custom cell. Now, if I was to go to engagement properties or load this into another file and change the name, that'll update automatically. So we can do that for any time the name of the company is referenced, and we can also follow a similar approach for the year-end date if we want to. So we can create a cell for the year-end date. We go Control and L shortcuts, and we type in, as you can see on here, cust CYN for the current year-end date. Cust CYN. We just literally copy the cell number, press OK, press OK. You can see our calculated value, press OK. And again, if I was to update our financial statements with a new end date, then that would update accordingly. We can put it here as well. Control L, cust, CY end, OK, OK, OK. There we go. That's in the file. And as I said, you could, depending on how much you want to automate this, you could even automate things like the year end. Whereas LO, just so you know, that is for lowercase. UP for uppercase. So again, the first letter will just be uppercase or lowercase, depending on what we're looking at. But again, this is driven solely upon, there's a cell within the wizard document where if it is a shorter or longer period than 12 months, then we'll have the option to say period instead, and then that will update accordingly. So the second thing you might want to look to do is automate some of these cells. And again, that will make it available across all files. The next thing you want to look at is again, in your reports, is any bullet points you've got in there. And again, you can do that approach we just mentioned within directors reports as well. You can create cells within any text section on the financial statements, whether that's in the actual accounts, whether it's through these custom reports that we're talking about on this session. But yeah, with the bullet points that are used in Word are different from the bullet points that are used within Caseware. So if I go to our accounts document and we go to, you can see director's responsibility, there's quite a bit of space between our bullet point and our text. And it's consistent in this section of the director's report as well. We go down and our standard audit report is consistent as well. So again, we want to make sure that what we add is consistent. The other thing we will notice in here is there's a small space between the bullet points. So they're not directly below each other. There's a small space in there. So again, we want to maintain consistency. So first thing we will do, remove the default bullet points that Caseware has taken across from Word. Click on instead of clicking on the bullet point button to add a bullet point into the system, because that will just copy the bullet point layout from Word, you want to go to the multi-level list button over here to add our bullet point in. So we go to multi-level list, we select bullets, and then what you want to do is make sure the indent matches Caseware. So the text indent should be 0.4 as opposed to 0.25. We press apply, and that adds in our bullet point with the same spacing we get within the accounts. Now, you think we can just keep going back to this button if we want to add other ones in, but the easiest way, as with Word, backspace, press enter, backspace, press enter, and you've got now bullet points on each of those lines. The other thing that we mentioned is that small spacing that we've got in our accounts between each of these lines. If I jump back to the accounts, you can see there's a small space here, a small space here, and a small space underneath this one as well, just to, again, space out those bullet points. If we want to follow that approach as well, all you need to do is put a space between your two bullet points, backspace, and on this paragraph marker, go to the styles option that we mentioned previously, and there is a style in there which is called a spacer 05. Spacer 05 is the spacer used within the Caseware software to segregate out those bullet points. If you're not sure, go back to your accounts, or not sure which one to use, go to the home tab at the top. And sorry, if I go to enable editing, if you can't access enable editing, then it's probably worth just making a note of what I'm mentioning. But if we have enable editing open, you can see the style that's being picked up on this line, which is a space row 5. So all we're doing is replicating that within our report. So we go back to our audit report and we will click on the drop down and go space row 5 there. Put a space in between these, remove the bullet point by backspacing, and then creating a spacer 05 in there. So now we've got a nice little space between each of our bullet points in the same way Caseware will. Okay, once we're done and we've added all our sections in, we can backspace to remove any outstanding bullet points. Obviously, usually you'd have all the other sections in there, but just for this demonstration, we'll leave it at that. Now, again, you can use Print Preview to preview that, but if you're happy with the work that you've done, obviously there is other customization cells that we can create if we need to. But just again, this is an introductory webinar. So just in terms of basics, that's a minimum that you want to be doing on these custom reports. And then we can press save to save that report and save those changes and close it once we're done. Now, once we've done that, we now need to enable our custom report within our computer settings so we can build it into the accounts. So if I go back into our Caseware file, to get this into the accounts, again, to replace the default audit report, we need to firstly go back to our working papers. We need to go to, if you're in an audit file, you may not have you might want to access this through the wizard. You can access the computer settings through the wizard. If you're in the an accounts advanced file, you go to other docs and you can select computer settings. So this is the steps required to build this into our financial statements. So first thing we do is we load computer settings, wait for that to load. Again, it's a separate case view document. It's a virtual document built into the Caseware system. So we load up our computer settings, and if it loads on the introduction screen, you want to go down to custom library files. From here, you can see you've got the option to trigger to say to Caseware that there are custom reports available for some of these different options. So in this case, we would select audit report, and we specify one or more custom audit reports by clicking on the sort of trigger option on the right hand side. From here, we can then specify what our custom knowledge library that we want to use is. So we click on here, and we would then browse to our C drive program files 86, Caseware resources knowledge library custom, and we would pick up our custom audit report. So now this is going to be available within every file that I access on the system. I say I because at the moment it's only available to me. But if we want to make that the default on any new file we create going forward, we can also tick the box on the left-hand side to make this the default report. So any new files that we create won't have the standard audit report in them. They'll always have our custom one. If I tick the box, again, that doesn't mean that I can't also load in other audit reports into other files if I need to. If it's not going to be the default, don't tick the box. Simple as that. Now, once that's done, now Caseware is aware that there's a custom report available. At the moment in our accounts, it's still going to pick up the default one. But if I go back to the accounts prep table, and from the accounts prep table, you will see in this case, line item number 7, we've got audit report, and now it says standard. Before it will just say audit report, but now we have the standard text coming through, and we also have an option for this C icon to apply a custom report. This will also apply if you've got a custom directors report. You'll get a little C icon appearing to load in that custom directors report, or if you're using a custom accountants report or an assurance report, again, similarly, you'll see that option. We press the C icon though, and you can see we have the option to use a standard KL, or to use the custom one, or to select an alternative custom one. So because we've loaded it into the computer settings, Caseware recognizes that exists. So we can click on here, and we can use the custom report instead. It will pop up with a message, say, do we want to replace the default one? You always want to say yes. And then it'll ask you to take an update. Now, I know some people don't like taking updates. Please take the audit report update. Otherwise, it will not update the text. Again, pretty self-explanatory. It'll be today's date because that's when we've created it. Press OK. and we give it a second to load. And once that's loaded in, we'll now be able to see in our financial statements our custom report. Double click on here and it's going to take us into the custom report. So you can see we've got all the right styles. We've got our cells automating things like the name of the company. We've got our text at the top. You can see the green areas are input. I can type into there if I need to, but this area is not input. So we've locked that essentially behind the text standard layout. We can still automate this if we want to. We've got our signature section at the bottom as well, which is pulling through automatically from the wizard document because we left that within our custom folder. Now, last point, just to quickly highlight before we go to questions, distributing that report amongst our colleagues. So I've made the report. We've got Georgie in the room with me today, and Georgie's doing other sets of accounts, and we want to make sure the audit report is consistent. Easy enough to do. All I need to do is come into the library path, program files, caseware, resources, knowledge library, custom, and I need to take a copy of this, either put it into a shared location that Georgie can access, or I need to put it into into like an email and email it across. It's only a small file. It's 104 gigabytes, so it's not massive at all. It's easily transferred across via email. But the important thing is Georgie will need to take a copy of this and put it into the same path to be able to load it into her computer settings and into her files as well. Once that's done, the audit report will be available. Obviously, if I make an update, I'll just need to resend a new version and ask Georgie to reload that instead. And obviously anyone else that was also using it. So you don't have to create one each, you just create one and share it across the team. Okay, so we've got a few minutes. I always like to leave a few minutes for any Q&A. So I'll pass back to Georgie for any questions that anyone's sent in.
Perfect, thank you. Yeah, we do have a few. So the first one that come in said, can you still insert objects into custom reports?
Yeah, so in theory, you can do when I'm in, I'll load up my custom report again. Bear with me 1 second. Let me just find the C drive, program files 86. Should have left it open. And the short answer, yes, because it's in theory just it's in a similar way to a standard set of accounts. You can add objects in, you can add things into the audit report in the same way you would within the financial statements. You go to the insert button at the top, you got objects over here, you can insert pictures, tables if you want to as well. So yeah, anything you can do in enable editing within the financial statements, you can do within a custom report. You just don't need to put a password in to do that.
Perfect, thank you. The next one is, can you use custom reports for sections of the director's report, or does it have to be the full thing?
Yeah, sorry, great question. Yeah, so it has to be a replacement of the of the director's report. You can't have it for parts of it. There is an option alternatively where you can save out custom sections within the director's report using the save button at the top of the screen, which will let you save out a section. So for example, say I've done customizations to results and dividends. I can click here and I can save it out if I just want to save an individual section and apply that to another set of accounts as well. If you want some guidance on that, we can send that across from our knowledge base.
Perfect, thank you. And lastly, can you create custom strategic report, or are the only options available in the custom folder?
Again, there we go. Yeah, so currently it's custom director's report, an audit report, assurance report, accountant's report. No option for strategic report, but again, you can use the option I just mentioned about saving out individual text sections if you want to. So again, in your accounts, any text section. So for example, I've done a business review and I've populated that, put cells in and stuff like that. Click on the heading, go to the save button, save it as a custom section. Press OK. That will save it into the custom path that we've just mentioned. So I've got it saves as a report section, in this case, business review. And I'll then have the option to go to the add button on another set of accounts, go to user defined, and I'd be able to add in that report section, business review, and replace the existing one within a file if I want to. That works slightly differently, but you can still do it. again, if you want a webinar on that and how we would do that and the automation involved in there as well, then let us know.
Perfect, thank you. That was everything in the way of questions. I will still keep an eye out if any more do come in. But otherwise, if we move on to the next slide, please, Phil. So webinars then. So you registered for today's event via the events page on our website. If you take a look over there, we have got more upcoming, and you can take a look at all the agendas and register for those accordingly. YouTube then. So we do have a YouTube channel. So all of our quick vid content is uploaded to YouTube, and we have it all in playlists as well. So you'd be able to easily find those that are relevant to the licensing you have. So they're quick vids on how to do various things, editing within the financial statements, etc. A recording of today's webinar will be placed on our YouTube channel as well. But we do appreciate that sometimes IT does restrict that. So we do have our knowledge base available too. So all of our quick vid content is placed on our knowledge base. A recording of today's webinar will be placed there as well. And we have lots of guidance available over there. We have a getting started series as well. And we do actually have a custom reports getting started also. So you've got that alongside today's webinar if you need to refer to it at all. Perfect. Okay then. Well, that concludes today's webinar. Thank you very much for your attendance today. And as Phil mentioned, if you've got any further content that you would like to see, then do get in contact with us. You can email the training team, or you can contact us via our website. But otherwise, enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone.